Hello, I'm Sunny. I am an actor on General Hospital, and many people really love both me and our General Hospital drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved General Hospital. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. General Hospital is about to unleash one of its most emotionally explosive weeks yet, as Curtis Ashford's criminal trial collides with the birth of his child, creating a perfect storm of desperation, betrayal, and impossible choices. Every decision Curtis makes now carries enormous consequences, and with the courtroom looming closer by the day, the pressure surrounding him has reached a breaking point. What should have been one of the happiest chapters of his life has instead become a nightmare filled with legal battles, broken relationships, and dangerous obsessions. As loved ones prepare to welcome a new baby into the world, Curtis finds himself consumed by one overwhelming fear: the possibility that prison could rob him of those precious first moments forever. That fear is slowly transforming into something much darker, pushing him toward choices that could destroy what little remains of his future. Even before stepping into court, Curtis has already begun plotting a ruthless strategy to escape the punishment waiting for him. After all, ADA Justine Turner offered him what many would consider an incredibly generous plea bargain. Despite the brutal nature of the assault and the mountain of witnesses prepared to testify against him, Curtis was offered just 2 years behind bars, with the possibility of parole after only 8 months. For almost anyone else facing those circumstances, it would have seemed like a deal too good to refuse. But Curtis couldn't bring himself to accept it. As he confessed to Jordan Ashford, he refuses to spend even a single day in prison because doing so would mean missing the birth of his child and those irreplaceable early months that no parent can ever get back. That refusal has set Curtis on an increasingly dangerous path, one where winning matters far more than truth or integrity. Standing beside him is Martin Gray, the crafty and ethically questionable attorney whose reputation for bending the rules makes him exactly the kind of lawyer Curtis believes he needs. Martin may be Laura Collins's brother, but even those closest to him know he isn't above employing questionable courtroom tactics if it benefits his client. Curtis understands that playing fair may no longer be enough to save himself, and Martin seems more than willing to explore every possible loophole, regardless of how morally questionable it might be. Together, they are preparing a defense that could turn the entire trial into a spectacle built on accusations, manipulation, and calculated risk. Their most controversial strategy revolves around Isaiah Gannon, whom Curtis remains absolutely convinced played a hidden role in the crash. Curtis wants Martin to accuse Isaiah of being the mysterious second driver who fled the accident scene, hoping that theory will somehow justify his violent assault. Martin, however, immediately recognized the enormous legal obstacles standing in their way. He warned Curtis that the judge might refuse to allow such an accusation into evidence altogether because there is simply no concrete proof connecting Isaiah to the incident. Still, Martin admitted that if the court somehow permitted the argument, it could become an incredibly compelling narrative before the jury. It would be a gamble unlike any other, and one capable of changing the direction of the entire trial if it somehow succeeded. Unfortunately for Curtis, the investigation has already taken an unexpected turn that makes blaming Isaiah even more difficult. Thanks to Lucy Coe's false statement and Brooklyn Quartermain's deliberate manipulation of Willow Tate's trip log, the Port Charles Police Department now believes Willow may have been the mysterious second driver instead. That false evidence has completely shifted the investigation away from Isaiah, leaving Curtis's courtroom strategy hanging by a thread. If Martin suddenly attempts to accuse someone who isn't even considered a suspect by investigators, the judge would almost certainly shut the argument down before it ever gained traction. There are no eyewitnesses placing Isaiah on that road that night, no physical evidence connecting him to the accident, and nothing beyond the simple fact that he owns a black SUV, a detail shared by countless other residents of Port Charles. Meanwhile, the altered trip log continues placing Willow directly at the scene, making Isaiah appear even less likely to have been involved. Yet none of those facts have shaken Curtis's belief that Isaiah is somehow responsible. His conviction remains unwavering, and that determination continues fueling increasingly reckless ideas. During one strategy session, Martin and Curtis even discussed whether Willow herself had been framed. Jordan offered an interesting possibility by suggesting they approach Harrison Chase, knowing that he has always been one of Willow's strongest defenders. In their minds, Chase might be willing to help clear Willow's name if he believed she had become the victim of a setup. On the surface, that plan seems logical, but hidden beneath it lies a much more explosive truth capable of blowing the entire case apart. What Jordan doesn't realize is that Chase already knows Brooke Lynn was responsible for framing Willow in the first place. At the moment, Chase has chosen to remain silent because Willow has not been formally charged with any crime, and exposing Brooke Lynn would create enormous consequences for everyone involved. But that fragile silence may not last much longer. If Jordan approaches Chase and he realizes Willow could be dragged into court and forced onto the witness stand, everything could change in an instant. Should Martin move forward with his attempt to blame Isaiah, the district attorney's office would almost certainly respond by calling Willow as a witness to dismantle that theory. Prosecutors could simply introduce the falsified trip log into evidence, immediately undermining Martin's entire argument while keeping Isaiah safely out of the spotlight. The situation becomes even more complicated because ADA Justine Turner has personal ties to Jordan, making it impossible for her to remain directly involved in the prosecution. Yet, if the courtroom battle reaches the point where Willow risks public humiliation and the destruction of her congressional career, Chase may finally decide enough is enough. He could pressure Brooke Lynn into confessing what she did and force the altered trip log to be corrected. Authorities would then have little choice but to acknowledge that the evidence against Willow was fabricated all along. That revelation would clear Willow completely, but it would also create a brand new opening for Curtis to redirect suspicion toward Isaiah once again. Curtis would undoubtedly seize that opportunity with everything he has, determined to convince the jury that Isaiah was truly responsible all along. Even then, however, Curtis's strategy may collapse under the weight of another unexpected witness. Lulu Spencer could emerge with information capable of destroying his entire theory. She might testify that Isaiah actually encountered her that night rather than Rocco Falconeri, providing Isaiah with a believable alibi that places him somewhere entirely different during the crash. Such testimony would unravel Curtis's carefully constructed narrative and leave Martin scrambling to recover before the jury. Instead of creating reasonable doubt, Curtis might only succeed in exposing just how desperate he has become. The courtroom could quickly transform into complete chaos, with every new witness revealing another layer of deception and misunderstanding. Martin has also suggested another emotionally charged tactic that feels just as controversial. He believes putting Jordan on the witness stand could generate tremendous sympathy from the jury because they would see firsthand the devastating injuries she suffered. Her scarred face would undoubtedly stir powerful emotions, and Martin hopes that emotional reaction could somehow influence the verdict. Yet there is a major flaw in that strategy. Jordan has already admitted to investigators that she caused the crash herself. Regardless of whether another driver fled the scene afterward, the terrible injuries she sustained happened during the collision itself, not because someone else failed to stop afterward. Curtis's argument has always centered around the possibility that Jordan could have died, but the undeniable reality is that she survived, and the second driver's actions did not directly cause the injuries now being presented to the jury. The emotional cost of placing Jordan on the witness stand may be even greater than the legal risk. She remains deeply self-conscious about her facial injuries, making the thought of displaying them before a packed courtroom incredibly painful. Although Jordan might ultimately agree if she believed it would save Curtis from prison, asking her to relive that trauma feels almost unbearably cruel. Watching Curtis appear so willing to use Jordan's suffering as part of his defense leaves an unsettling impression that desperation has begun overriding compassion. Even Martin's willingness to suggest such a strategy reveals just how far both men are prepared to go. Their legal battle is no longer simply about proving innocence. It has become a relentless fight where almost any tactic seems acceptable if it keeps Curtis out of prison. Outside the courtroom, another emotional explosion is already building. Portia Robinson's pregnancy has finally reached its dramatic conclusion, and it appears the baby will arrive before opening arguments even begin. But rather than offering peace during such a life-changing moment, Jordan unexpectedly storms over to Portia's home and ignites an explosive confrontation. At first, it almost seems as though Jordan intends to calmly ask Portia to convince Isaiah to stop pursuing criminal charges against Curtis. Instead, emotions spiral completely out of control. Jordan begins screaming at Portia, accusing her of causing the entire situation, unleashing months of buried resentment in one breathtaking confrontation. Her anger feels so intense and irrational that it leaves everyone wondering whether she has completely lost control. Ironically, much of that bitterness stems from Curtis himself. Long before Isaiah entered the picture, Curtis had already developed an emotional attachment to Jordan that placed enormous strain on his marriage. The tension eventually erupted into a devastating confrontation between Curtis and Portia, one so explosive that it effectively ended their relationship. Portia gave Curtis one final chance, telling him that if he walked out the door, their marriage would be over forever. Curtis chose to leave anyway. Only after that painful separation did Portia eventually sleep with Isaiah. While the legal paperwork ending their marriage had not yet been completed, their relationship had already fallen apart emotionally. Yet in Curtis's mind, Portia betrayed him, and Isaiah became the man who stole his wife, creating a bitterness that continues poisoning every interaction between them. Now, as Portia goes into labor, fate delivers one final ironic twist worthy of the most dramatic soap opera storyline imaginable. There is every possibility that Jordan herself may end up helping deliver Portia's baby, forcing two bitter rivals together during one of life's most intimate moments. The emotional tension surrounding such a scene would be impossible to ignore. Unless doctors somehow manage to stop the labor, which appears highly unlikely, Curtis and Portia's child will be born within the next few episodes, just as July Sweeps reaches its climax. The timing could not be more significant. Curtis has already been haunted by the fear of missing the birth, but once he actually lays eyes on his newborn child and experiences that overwhelming love only a parent can understand, his determination to stay out of prison may become stronger than ever before. That newborn baby represents everything Curtis stands to lose. Every day spent inside Pentonville would be another day Isaiah remains free to spend time with Portia and their child. From Curtis's perspective, prison would mean surrendering his place in his own family while another man steps into the role he believes belongs to him. If Isaiah were to provoke Curtis by suggesting he would become a father figure while Curtis sits behind bars, the emotional fallout could be catastrophic. One more violent confrontation would almost certainly guarantee Curtis a prison sentence, regardless of what happens during the trial itself. The line between understandable desperation and uncontrollable rage has become dangerously thin, and Curtis appears closer than ever to crossing it. Meanwhile, fans can finally breathe a sigh of relief because Portia's endlessly delayed pregnancy is at long last reaching its conclusion. In truth, she has been pregnant for what feels like an eternity. Since she conceived near the end of August the previous year, production delays caused by the extended absences of Finola Hughes and Steve Burton forced the writers to repeatedly postpone major storylines. As those scheduling changes piled up, Portia's pregnancy stretched into an astonishing 46 weeks, making the baby's arrival feel more overdue than almost any pregnancy viewers have ever witnessed on the series. At last, that long wait appears ready to end. Yet even after the baby is born, peace seems impossible. Early previews suggest Isaiah may interrupt an emotional moment between Curtis and Portia shortly after they meet their newborn child. Imagine Curtis standing beside the hospital bassinet, overwhelmed by the miracle of new life, only for Isaiah to walk into the room carrying balloons, a teddy bear, and perhaps even offering Portia a warm kiss. That single moment could ignite Curtis's fury beyond anything viewers have seen before. Every insecurity, every ounce of jealousy, every lingering resentment would explode all at once, threatening to undo whatever self-control he still possesses. As General Hospital barrels toward another unforgettable week, many viewers are beginning to believe Curtis deserves at least some time behind bars. Whether justice ultimately prevails remains to be seen, but one thing already feels certain: Martin Gray and Curtis Ashford are prepared to play as dirty as necessary, embracing twisted courtroom strategies that could change every life involved before the trial finally reaches its dramatic conclusion.